Hey guys, and welcome to another video from sunny Spain. And in this video we're going to put the Polestar 3 long-range dual motor performance up against the Polestar 4 long-range dual motor performance. And I know guys, these two cars are of course not direct competitors. The Polestar 3, though the name being lower on the nomenclature, is actually the bigger brother to the Polestar 4. And this is, more of a traditional type of SUV, where this is kind of a crossover between a tall sedan and an SUV, but there's also a coupe. So yeah, this is a completely different type of vehicle. But I've actually been getting questions on my videos, on my DMs on Instagram and other places like email, asking me which I would choose between the Polestar 3 and the Polestar 4 if both of them were in budget. Because some people, they may have the budget for this, but they may not want to spend more than this if this is almost as good. So in this video, we're gonna put them head to head and find out if you have the budget, should you go for a Polestar 3 over the Polestar 4, or is the Polestar 4 good enough? And before we set off the video, if you guys want to see how these two cars actually compare in a direct range test where we drive both cars at the same time, I'm going to link that video down below. Let's kick off this video looking at the exterior of the Polestar 4, which is in a lot of ways controversial. We're going to get to that at the end of the car when we move around, but let's start off with the front end. So this has the dual blade headlight design we first saw with the Polestar Precept like 2020 2021, and this is the first Polestar to have them, the first production Polestar to have them. And I think this front end, without a grille, is very low, it's very swooping, and with these headlights is a very attractive design. It is very distinct Polestar, and I just really like it. And also the Polestar logo here being body painted, that is a Polestar feature, which I think is very cool. So if we move around here, you can see that this is the performance version. So it has these 22-inch performance wheels, which of course are gonna penalize range a little bit, but I think they do look very, very nice. Another thing that looks very nice are these Polestar patented frameless mirrors. So if you come around here, you can see that there's actually no frame around them. So instead of the glass moving within the housing, the actual housing moves all together. So you have a camera down here for the 360 camera, you have a front-facing camera here, and also you have a rear-facing camera there. I'm not a huge fan of this sticking out like that, but I think it does work fine. From the side, this does look like a sedan, and that's what I think it is. Maybe a little bit taller sedan than what we're used to seeing, but all of these new electric cars built on these skateboard platforms where you have the battery pack in the floor, all of these cars actually are a little bit taller than traditional ICE powered sedans of the past. So I think that's the marketing jargon here, calling this a coupe SUV is, well, a marketing exercise, because it's a sedan, guys. Is it a coupe? Yeah, it doesn't have a rear window. It has, that sloping rear roof line, but it's just a tall sedan. Call a spade for a spade. But with that being said, I do think it is a very attractive design. I do like the lines. This gold paint color, not my favorite, but it is actually very bold. And again, those 22-inch wheels with these lines and creases, it's just a very attractive design. But maybe the most attractive part of this car is actually the rear 3/4. Yes, there is no rear window here, which is the controversial part, except for what they market this as. And because of that, you have a camera up here which gives a feed to a screen in the camera, or in the mirror up front. And I really, really like this rear light bar design, this 3D effect light bar design that comes down on each side. And I think this is a very, very attractive looking car from the rear. So just overall a very good looking car. And let me know guys what you think down below about the exterior of the Polestar 4. The Polestar 3, despite coming to market after the Polestar 4, is actually the older design and was developed before the Polestar 4. And that is apparent in the design language, because this is the first Polestar that was developed after the 2. And you can see that this also has, kind of the Thor's Hammer LED headlights we first saw with the Volvo XC90 back in 2014, and which we saw with the Polestar 2 and, you know, an evolution here with the Polestar 3. So it is this split, you know, dual blade, but it's not, you know, split in the same way as it is with that Polestar 4. And if you come around here, this also has, you know, more of a face. You have what's called a smart zone here with, you know, sensors. You have your camera, you have your radar and stuff like that. And then you have, you know, heated elements here for winter. This is more, you know, of a traditional front end with more of a grille. And also it has, you know, this spoiler here that's supposed to lower drag coefficient, that lets the air through here and then over the car. But I think this is a very attractive design, more than the 4. Well, I don't know, it's just different, but I like this also. And then this, because this is the performance pack, we also have 22-inch performance wheels, and I think they look great on this car. I think they're a little bit too big, and it makes the Polestar 4 look maybe a little bit comical, but here I think it's just the right fitment for this car. So from this angle, you can see this is more of a traditional SUV, well, compared to that Polestar 4. And I really like the proportions of this car. You can tell that they had more freedom with this because this platform was co-developed for this car and the Volvo EX90, where with the Polestar 4, it wasn't. And if you come closer here, you can also see that this has, you know, the same patented frameless mirrors that where the housing moves instead of the glass inside. And also I really like the door handles here, like the action of the door handles, and this does have, you know, soft closed doors. It just feels like more of a quality product. And then the door gets stuck. Then that Polestar 4, you know, this is a more expensive platform meant for higher end vehicles. Also the cladding down here that has that also is unpainted. You have, you know, this chrome strip here, and I just think it is an overall good looking design. And then you have, you know, this line here that kicks up here by the D pillar, and then we walk around it as a very unique rear end. And this may be, I don't know, is this the best angle or the front angle? I think, you know, I prefer the rear design of that Polestar 4, but I think maybe the rear taillight design here is even, you know, nicer. And then you can see that it swoops down because even the spoiler hits me about mid-chest. This car is only like 163 centimeters tall, so for being an SUV, it is actually very low. So for you guys who have been following the channel for a while, you guys know I love my light colored interiors, and thankfully Polestar haven't only given us one car with the zinc Nappa leather interior, this light colored gray color, but 2 Polestars with the same interior spec, and that's gonna make it much easier to compare the interior. So, you know, you sit kind of low in this car compared to the 3, but you do sit higher than, for example, the Polestar 2. This is, you know, a raised driving position. They call this car, you know, a coupe SUV. I don't think it's neither. I'd call it like a raised sedan without a rear window. But you know, that's the marketing jargon they want to use. So these two cars are, you know, similar but also different. This is built on the SE8 platform that also underpins the Volvo EX30, the Zeekr 001, and also the new Zeekr 7X. And it's very apparent with, you know, this screen, the orientation of the screen, and the button layout here that this is related to the 001 and that 7X. And you know, it's both good and bad. So let's start with the good. You know, this beautiful Nappa leather is really nice. These seats are supportive, they're cooled, they're heated, they're, you know, they look beautiful. The materials in the cabin for the most part are really, really good. You know, I'm not a huge fan of this, you know, leather type of, this type of, you know, soft touch plastics on top of the door here. I think compared to the rest of the cabin, it just feels a little bit cheaper. Like, this is beautiful and stitched, what you can see down here, and this just feels a little bit low rent. But now I'm really nitpicking, because this is a really nice interior with, you know, the headliner and this like micro suede type of material. The screen also, this orientation, this is a very good infotainment system. I've covered it extensively in my Polestar 4 review earlier, so if you want to check out an in-depth dive into this, I'd go check out that video. I'm going to link it down below. I really like the fact that, you know, there is a volume button here, but you can't push it right to left like with the Polestar 3 to change track, which is a little bit weird. My least favorite thing is probably the steering wheel buttons, because these are touch capacitive and they're not labeled. And also we're going to talk about that later on the road, that the ADAS in this car also not my favorite. But you know, nice driving position. Also, another thing I don't like is that you have to go into the buttons here. Let's see, adjustment, to adjust your exterior mirrors. You have to do that to adjust your steering wheel. And it's not, you know, the most intuitive. And also your head-up display, that's fine. But I just wish there were more hard buttons to do, you know, more of the functions that I think should be dedicated to hard buttons. And also this has, you know, a camera here, or a screen here, and a camera in the rear, because if you take a look back, there is actually no window in the rear. That doesn't bother me at all. You know, that was one of the things I thought was gonna bother me when I first drove the Polestar 4, but that doesn't bother me. But overall, you know, especially for this price point and getting this Nappa leather interior, really elevates the feeling and the quality of luxury. And you know, as a summation of the front cabin, this is a very, very impressive cabin at this price point. So again, the rear seats, oh, this does not have soft close like the 3. The rear seats, I mean, you sit lower than in that 2, and also these rear seats are reclinable. Let's see if I can pull this out. I have to pull this here. Okay, there we go. So there are buttons like this on my side also. So that means you can recline the seat. You can see that that's moving up, and I can do that on my side also, which is a nice touch. You know, there's decent room here. I'm sat behind myself. I'm about 180 centimeters, 5'11", and there's decent room. But you can see that because, you know, this is a lower riding car, the rear seats are also lower, so there's not a massive amount of under thigh support. And also, if you come closer, you can see that there's actually a very little room for my feet to slide under that front seat. And that's because I like to sit low. If you're behind a passenger who likes to sit higher, that's not going to be a problem. But you know, for me, it's not, you know, there is a lot of room here. Also, headroom is pretty decent, but because of that angle, you feel you're sitting very close to the floor, and I don't find that too comfortable. Also, this center armrest here, pretty nice. I mean, look at really nice, the leather here, this storage cubby here also, and then you should have, let's see, there should be some cup holders here, if that wants to pop out. Okay, so that's not working, but okay, there should be cup holders there. But you know, a nice rear seat, and also it's a bit weird that you don't have, you know, if you look here, there's no rear view window, so that's something to get used to. But you know, it is a comfortable and nice place, and because you can recline those seat back, it's also very comfortable. So this is more like it. You do step into the Polestar 3, and this is a low SUV. That's why, you know, I don't think it makes any sense that they call the Polestar 4 an SUV, because this is an SUV. But you know, people argue that this may just be a tall station wagon, because it's not like a proper SUV like a Volvo EX90. And I've also made a comparison video between this and that. I'm going to link that down below if you want to know how these two cars stack up against each other. And also I've done range tests between those two cars head to head. But this does have soft closed doors. You know, this is built on the SPA2 platform, which also underpins the Volvo EX90, the new Volvo ES90, and it is a more upmarket platform. And, you know, that is apparent here in the interior. It's, you know, this is quality-wise a step above that Polestar 4, and, you know, that you would expect that at the price point. But also, not only, you know, the materials, where you have, you know, this beautiful fabric on top of the dashboard, on top of the doors. There are just a lot of more layers and nuances to this interior, like this beautiful wood trim. You also have, you know, this light strip here in the decor. And if you take a look at the doors, you have the Bowers & Wilkins speaker grills there down below, and also the tweeters on top of the doors, and also, you know, that LED strip over there that says Bowers & Wilkins. There's just a lot of attention to detail in this interior. which I really do like. And also, if you take a look, this has, you know, that dome tweeter by Bowers Wilkins also. So, you know, it's just a more upmarket feel. And here on the steering wheel also, you know, it may look similar, but the tolerances are just a lot nicer. It feels more like a precision tool, this car. And also these seats, I think they're even better than what you find in that Polestar. Also, the seating position is really nice, like where I rest my elbows. It's a perfect, you know, angle to the steering wheel. This also has, you know, a volume knob, but unlike with that Polestar 4, you can actually press forwards and backwards to change track. So I just, you know, think, except for the glossy black plastic here, which I'm really not a fan of, for me, this is a nicer interior. It's just a little bit more well thought out, though I am missing, you know, controls or physical controls to adjust the steering wheel and to also adjust the mirrors. And also this has a really dumb, if you come closer, a really dumb way to adjust the seat, where you have to press the middle button. So now I can adjust it forwards and backwards. So I can also twist this knob here to adjust the seat back. But if I want to do the angle, I have to press it again, and then I can do the angle, and then I can do the side support. This also has massage function also, which works quite nice. So, you know, there are a lot of things that I don't like all of the controls that are buried in the menu here. And also I think that the infotainment system is just a little bit better in that Polestar 4 than it is in the Polestar 3, where you have, you know, more intuitive shortcuts and stuff like that. But none of these interiors are perfect. But if I were to choose one, I say I like this a little bit more than that. So also stepping into the rear, you actually step into the rear and not down. And also, like the front doors, these rear doors are soft close. So this is a bigger vehicle, but not by, you know, as much as you'd think, because for being on this platform, this is only 4.9 meters. So it's about 15 centimeters shorter than the Volvo EX90, though it has the same wheelbase. And this has, you know, some of the same issues as with the Polestar 4, where you sit lower. There's more headroom here, so there's, you know, room for lifting up the seat, because the underthigh support is, you know, pretty much the same here. You don't have a lot of underthigh support, but it may be because this is an SUV and I sit higher, though I still feel I'm sitting lower. You can see here that I have room for my feet actually in front of the, or underneath the seats, under the seat of the driver, right? So this is a more comfortable place to sit because of that. And also materials here are beautiful. This is a really nice rear seat, and also because there is actually a rear window, and along with the panoramic sunroof, it doesn't feel as dark or as, you know, claustrophobic. May not be the correct word, but it feels more airy here. Also, this armrest here, you know, beautiful leather here, which is perforated on top of the armrest. And also this cup holder here is just really nice with this piece of metal trim here. So again, I just prefer the rear seats here. It's just a nicer place to spend time. Now let's take a look at the fronts of these two cars. So if you come closer, we're going to take a look at the Polestar 4 first. So this is what the area looks like. You have a cover here, and also you have your washer fluid beneath this cover, which is, you know, kind of cheap feeling and very easy to lose. I don't remember the liters of this, but I think the Polestar 3 can take at least 6 liters. I remember testing that in winter. It took, you know, 2 of these 3-liter washer fluid bags, which is really nice because in Northern Europe and Scandinavia, you're going to use that a lot. So you could come here. This is a really nice cover that is actually hinged there up top. It's only 15 liters, and I don't understand why it's so small. They could have made it bigger, right? Or there's so much electronics here. And also you have your hazards there, your warning triangle, but that's what that looks like. And then if you come over to the Polestar 3, this is a little bit different. So you have your washer fluid up top here, so you don't have, you know, that cover you're going to lose. And as I said, it takes at least 6 liters. And this has, you know, a different cover that's, you know, it's kind of like a fabric, but it is stiff. And you can see right away, this is a lot bigger. It's actually more than twice as big. This is 32 liters. So none of them have, you know, particularly big fronts, but this is twice as big as that one. Now let's take a look at the trunks of these two cars. And it's from the rear. You can see that these are actually very different, where this is a traditional SUV with a rear window, though it does have a sloping roof line and it's a lot lower than other cars. You can see that this is actually even lower than that, and also there's no rear window, and this deck lid here does swoop down to be more like a coupe. So you open up the trunk with this button above the Polestar logo, and this is where you see this space is utilized actually very effective. 526 liters on paper VDA measurements, and you know that may be a little bit deceiving. I'm going to tell you in a second, but the VDA measurements actually go up to the shoulder line, but because this is a closed off area, I'm guessing they're, you know, measuring this like a sedan or a coupe. And actually there's this cover here you can, you know, pull off or pull down to actually reveal a view into the cabin. So if you stick up the camera up there, you can actually see inside the cabin, well, barely. And then there is a cover here, which also reveals underfloor storage, so you have a lot of room there. And also this is a false floor, so you can even make it even lower. And then now you can see that this is actually a quite sizable space. This trunk is very wide, it's very useful, and also very tall. And then let's take a look at the Polestar. So that's 526 liters on paper. With the Polestar 3, you open up the trunk with the release under here. And on paper, at least this is smaller, 484 liters, so about, you know, 40 odd liters smaller. But because this is an open space, they actually stopped measuring with the VDA measurements up to this line here, so underneath this cover. So I'm pretty sure if you included the area above here, this would be at least as big. But what's really interesting, this has also, you know, this floor here that has, you know, this action where you can put it into here, and then you have some hooks here. You can also divide, you know, this space. You can see that this underfloor storage is actually a lot bigger than what we find in that Polestar 4. So I think this is actually the bigger of the two, though on paper that's about 40 liters bigger than this. The Polestar 4 has one of these proximity keys without buttons, and that means you have to rely on the proximity sensor and the car communicating and the car unlocking doors and, you know, making those door handles come out of the body when you step up to the car. For the most part, it does work, but sometimes it gets confused, especially if you leave the car and you get back in the car. And sometimes when you leave the car, you're unsure if the car's gonna, you know, lock itself, and then you go over to the car and then it opens. It's, you know, for simplicity, it would be easier if it just had buttons, because, you know, those times that proximity sensor doesn't, you know, work and the car's not communicating with the key, it's nice just, you know, pressing a button and overriding that all together. So that's my experience with this car, with all the Polestar 4s I've driven, is that these proximity keys in theory are a good idea, but in practice don't really work all that well. So this being a model sold in the EU after July 2024, it does have to comply to GSR2, which means that it has to have, you know, driver alert monitoring system, speed limit warning, and also lane keep assist turn on automatically, even though you turn them off every time you enter the car. So every key off, key on cycle, they reset to the on setting. So to turn off that in this car, which I think those systems are quite annoying, and I like to have them off, you go into your menu here, and then you have your assistant, and then you can turn off lane keeping aid. There we go. Speed limit warning, and also driver alert. But then we have to put on our seatbelt and put the car into drive. There we go. And then turn that off. And as I talked about in my interior part of this video, is that, you know, I'm not a huge fan of the way you just, you know, the steering wheel and stuff like that. And now since we're two drivers switching up cars, and also my videographer Louise, she likes to have one pedal drive off and creep on, which is the exact opposite of what I like. So you can turn off creep, you can turn one pedal drive on, and you can also have the power delivery and range or performance. I like the steering in light, and also this does have adaptive dampers, so you can put them in standard, nimble, or firm. And then you can do ESC on or ESC sport mode. So we're at this Ionity charging station filming, and I think I want to take the car up the road here. I haven't been up this way before. So this being the performance version, it has dual electric motors, 544 horsepower, so that has 272 horsepower on the front axle and on the rear axle. This is the fastest car Polestar make, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.8 seconds. So this thing is actually quite rapid, and more rapid than the Polestar 3. So when you squeeze your right toe towards the floor, this thing does pick up speed. Yeah, really, really impressive. But I'm going to say one thing about this car and this platform is that I thought about this every time I get into a Polestar 4, is that the cabin feels very wide, and that is because the car is very wide. On the road, on these, you know, narrow Spanish country roads, it is actually quite a big car. And I think the Polestar 3, if I'm not mistaken, is actually a little bit narrower. It feels narrower in the city. You know, we've been here a little while now, and I've been driving in Madrid quite a while with the Volvo EX90. Hasn't been a problem, though that is a big car. I'm used to big cars. I think this feels even wider than that car. But on these roads, you know, the suspension really copes with the surface really nicely. This is a very sporting car to drive. I was very lucky maybe like 3-4 weeks ago to get to drive this on an ice track in Gulsfjellet in Norway alongside the Polestar 3, and I think on an ice track this lets more slip with ESC Sport mode on, and it just is more playful on an ice track, at least. On these roads, you know, we have these large wheels and tires, and I don't think we're gonna break traction anytime fast. And there's a speed bump. Yeah, you know, this suspension really copes with that, you know, that the road surfaces, the speed bumps really nicely. It is an impressive car, and then you can, you know, put it into nibble. I think firm in both this and the Polestar 3 is maybe just a little bit too firm, but yeah, that's nice nimble. Let's try out firm. Yeah, it does get a little bit, you know, more choppy, but when you squeeze the throttle, it just gets going and gets out of its way like nothing else. I mean, this thing feels so fast on these narrow roads. But I remember when I was driving this on an ice track, again, a very different type of driving than we do here, especially, you know, in Spain, that the steering was more naturally weighted on that ice track. But, you know, you don't have, you know, the same texturing of the road because you're on ice as you're gonna have here. Here, you know, hopping from, I've driven a Polestar 3 quite a bit, and, you know, I'm gonna reassess this once I hop into that. I think that, you know, on these roads, the steering is just a little bit too, you know, vague and light off center, and just a little bit lacking in feel. Of course, I have it in the lightest mode. If I put it into firm, you know, it's still very light off center. Off center feel is pretty much the same in standard, light, standard, or firm. That really doesn't change like before you do some weighting. And I think it's just in light, it just feels more natural. You know, I'm one of those people who think, you know, firm steering or heavy steering doesn't necessarily make the driving experience better or give you more feel. And most cars just feel more natural with their lightest, you know, steering feel. Going through these corners, I mean, the thing grips because it is ridiculously fast on these roads, but there's not a lot of steering feel, which does take a little bit away from, you know, that fun, but it's still a fun car. So the 3 also has the same type of proximity key as the 4, though not the same proximity key. And as you saw, or you may not have seen, but the car actually didn't unlock and make the door handles fold out of the car when I walked up to it. I actually had to put my hand, pull, and then it reacted. So with this car, there have been more issues than with that car. So again, same as with that car, just give us buttons, Polestar, come on. Because like software issues seem to be with these locks and with these keys seem to be a thing. Also, there's an issue with this specific car now where it's just stuck on the head-up display. I tried to reset the infotainment system countless times, and yeah. But you know, the mirrors and stuff like that are adjusted to me, so it doesn't bother me now, but it's just a bit frustrating and annoying. And like with that car, this being sold in the EU after July 2024, GSR2, to turn off these driver assistance systems. It's different in this. This is a different setup because this is built on a different platform. So you go into your assistance systems, lane keep off, speed limit warning off, and also distraction alert off. Though with the distraction alert, with the last Polestar 3 I had, it seemed that you couldn't turn it off as much as, for example, with the Volvo EX90, which is a bit strange. So you have drive modes here, and range mode, performance mode, steering to light, also suspension set to standard, there we go. One pedal drive on standard, and then creep off. And then let's just adjust the seat and set off. I wish I could just, put the steering wheel just a little bit lower again because, my videographer, she's very short. She likes to sit high up like that, but I like to sit low. And the steering wheel is just in a little bit of an awkward position for me. So just move the seat up a little bit. So this immediately feels more plush, more luxurious. This is on air suspension, adaptive dampers. That car does only has adaptive dampers, no air suspension. So this is like, it's a more refined experience. And I think because of the adaptive air suspension, you have more range from, for example, comfort to sport, and also more flexibility in how you control the car. And this is just a really nice driving car. Both cars are on 22-inch wheels, so I think it's a very fair comparison to compare what these cars feel like. When you go full throttle with range mode on, it takes a second because it has to couple that rear motor. I think it's a physical clutch, so it feels almost like a downshift and an automatic transmission. And also, unlike that Polestar 4, this has a torque vectoring rear differential, but this has less horsepower. So 517 horsepower, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in a whole second slower, or almost at 4.7 seconds. But no, through these corners, the steering, yeah, it just feels more natural in this car. So put it into performance mode, and then, I mean, it's fast. It's just not as fast as that thing over there. It does pick up speed. It's not the same punch as the 4. And also it just feels a little bit more narrower on these roads, just a little bit more pointy. And let's put the suspension into nimble. Let's see if we have a little bit of different steering feel. Off center, it feels very light, this car also, but I just think there's a little bit more texture through the steering wheel when it comes to the road feel. Also coping really nice over these speed bumps. Yeah, but there just isn't nearly as much punch as in that Polestar 4, which is very interesting. But I think this is just so much more composed. And also I just prefer the actual steering wheel here also. Feels, the rim is a little bit thinner. Also the grips here a little bit nicer. Yeah, put it into firm. And this really becomes firm. Like, as I said, the range in this suspension is a lot more than with that other car, with the Polestar 4. And also, yeah, okay, steering in firm, weights up nicely off center. So this, has a wider range when it comes to its personality. I mean, but it's a rapid thing, this Polestar 3. And I really like the fact that you sit high, it's an SUV, there's no apologies for what it is, and then you put it into standard suspension and light steering. And it's just a very comfortable cruiser. Again, over the speed bumps here. Yeah, it just turns into a luxury SUV. And then firm here, firm there, and then give it a little bit punch. And it just grips. It's just so composed and controlled. It is genuinely a very, very impressive car, this Polestar 3. So we've been filming another video in between this video, and that is my range test between these two cars, because I wanted to do that to get, the results of that, how these two cars compare, before I, film the outro to this review comparison. So if you want to know the exact results of how much range this got and this got, under today's conditions at 120 kilometers an hour or 75 miles an hour, go watch that video. But what I can say is this got more range, which was what I predicted. But by how much, I think is going to affect people's judgment between these two cars. So conclusion time, it's a hard one because it really depends on what you want. Like Louise behind the camera, throughout the whole week, she has preferred the Polestar 4 to the Polestar 3. I just asked her, and we've been driving so many different cars, and she's like, no, she just likes it. And you know, people like what they like. I think this is technically a better car, more comfortable, nicer interior. You know, it has more room, quieter, better sound system. But I think also this is a very, very good car, and they are very closely matched. So I think if you can live with a smaller battery pack, if you can live with less space and you don't need that SUV, and you can also live with this car not having a rear view mirror or rear view window, for me that's a non-issue, and you like the way this looks, I think you can actually get one of these and save quite a bit of money compared to one of these if that's, you know, what you want. But for me, if you want the ultimate Polestar experience at the moment, the best driving, the best riding, the most comfortable, the most quiet, the nicest interior, and I think this is also maybe, I don't know, maybe it's not better looking. I don't know, I can't decide between the two. But if you want the best Polestar experience at the moment, go for this if you can afford. So guys, let me know what you would choose in the comment section down below. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please drop me a thumbs up down below. And for more car content, as always, please subscribe. See you guys later, and goodbye.